how you got involved in it.
Sure. Well, it's kind of an unusual answer, I think. A rock star called me up one day by the name of Tom DeLong, who happened to be passionate about this issue and had seen an article I had published. And just out of the blue, he called, and he had a company he was standing up called To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences. And it was largely other former government officials, CIA and others. So I started to network with those guys, and through them I met Lou Elizondo at the Pentagon. And I attended a briefing with him in 2016, and I learned that our East Coast fighter squadrons were having recurring weekly incidents off the coast with vehicles of unknown origin that had no transponders, that seemed like they were probably engaged in espionage or clandestine collection. They varied in type and size and so forth, but nobody was doing anything about it. Nothing. Nobody was even reporting it up the chain. It was just outrageous. And when I found that out, I just said, this is unacceptable. I'm from the intel community myself. I'm ashamed that this is happening, and I want to do anything I can, Lou, to help remedy this situation. So I jumped in and started working with Lou on this.
Now I'm wondering what kind of reception you got inside government as you said, hey, wait a second, why isn't anyone dealing with this?
Yeah, it wasn't easy, and what enabled us to make progress, let me say, initially we failed, by the way, inside the government. I had two friends, wonderful, bright, young former military guys who were direct reports to General Mattis himself. And they understood that at that level, this was real, but we still couldn't take it the next level to the Secretary himself. There was so much concern about the exact stigma that you're talking about. There was concern that even by taking a briefing on the topic, if that was revealed, it could damage him politically.
Nickel 6-1 Tango, Roger, there's troubleshooting as soon as I get. Did you box moving target? No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at
So they wanted to just, shunt it off, put it in the back in the corner somewhere, which wasn't going to do anything. And Lou and I talked about it extensively, and he made the very difficult and fairly profound decision to resign over this issue, provide a resignation letter to the Secretary of Defense explaining why he was resigning, what this problem was, and then he started working with me to help get it into the papers, into the New York Times, and in front of Congress.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is an LNS, dude. Well, if there's like another thing, it's rotating.
And you were quite concerned not only for the pilots who are witnessing this, my understanding is, on a daily, sometimes daily basis, but you see this as a threat, these things out there.
Well, we're clearly vulnerable, and it's very disturbing. And let me try to explain this a little bit, because some people have accused me of trying to, create some justification for increased military spending or something. This is a combination. What I discovered at the time was something of a mix between Pearl Harbor and 9/11. In Pearl Harbor, we had a radar established. They saw the incoming Japanese aircraft, but they were unable to get a warning up the chain. They didn't pass the information along. They didn't know what they were looking at, and they just didn't bother. In 9/11, we had a situation where FBI and CIA weren't talking to each other. Well, that is going on in spades also in this situation. And one might have thought we would have learned those lessons, and yet this is still happening. So it doesn't mean there's an imminent threat. It doesn't mean that, we need to have our hair on fire or overreact. But clearly, if somebody's in your house, in your bedroom walking around, you want to know who it is, right? You want to identify them. It's just a prudent thing to do.
So you see this as a national security issue?
Absolutely. I don't know. I mean, how could we look at it? How could it not be when you've got vehicles that are routinely penetrating restricted military airspace, and we seem unable to engage them effectively? We have no idea where they're coming from or what their capabilities are or what their intent is. So it's not a threat in the sense of we know somebody intends to do us harm or seeks to exploit it. You might call it a vulnerability, a strategic vulnerability. And that is something we have to evaluate because we've got a tremendous chink in our armor, it appears. What happened in Saudi Arabia recently, where they lost half their oil refining capability as a result of a drone strike from some rebels in Yemen. If that heavily defended airspace with one of the largest military budgets in the world, if they could suffer that much damage from a rebel group, if this turns out to be, say, the Chinese, and we get into a conflict in Taiwan or the South China Sea, it could be devastating.
How do you think things have changed? And I'm thinking way back, in the 40s and the 50s, and people were talking about little green men and attack from Mars and that kind of thing. It seems to me, but now that the government is taking this seriously, that it's almost gone mainstream in a sense.
Well, the fact that the government has acknowledged that this is happening was an incredible breakthrough in terms of alleviating a lot of the stigma. So once the government formally and officially and publicly says, this is real, it's happening, that gets people's attention, and that does impart a lot of credibility that didn't exist before. So that was a huge change, and they were compelled to do that because when Congress, when we got the attention of some of the oversight committees and they started asking for briefings, that had to go up the chain, and the Navy and Defense Department couldn't tell the senators one thing and the public something else. So they sort of had to acknowledge this and come clean on this.
That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is the LNS, dude. Well, if there's like... Look at that thing! It's rotating.